Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk about letters of recommendation. So, how should you go about asking for a letter of recommendation? Let's say you want to go to a undergraduate program, or you want to get into a pharmacy school or med school or dental school, and it says there in the application forms you need 3, maybe 4 letters of recommendation from professors or other people you've worked with. So, how do you go about asking for a letter of recommendation? Well, there's actually a process to it. And what I would do is first figure out what the institution requires. What are they looking for in a letter? Did they give you any information as to what types of things they want you to include in the letter? Secondly, I'd figure out what the process entails. So, for example, what are the dates that the letters are due? Is it better if the letters get in early, or is there just a firm deadline? Where does the professor need to submit the forms? Is it a link? Is it something that the institution will email the professor? Or is it something that the professor needs to mail in? Make sure you figure out how the actual document has to be submitted, because the professor wants to know. The professor would like to know what is the deadline for the application, because believe it or not, us professors, we are pretty busy most of the time, and we need to know when a deadline is, because let's say the deadline's tomorrow. Well, I might not be able to write a letter by tomorrow because I may not have time. I have a lot of other things going on. But if the deadline is next month, then I'll have a lot of time to prepare and submit it correctly. And that leads me to my other point. Make sure you ask in advance. Make sure you ask as soon as you know you need a letter. You ask the professor, and then even if you don't have all the details, you just ask very nicely. You could approach the professor in person, preferably, and say, "Hey, Dr. So-and-so, or Mr. or Miss So-and-so, I'm going to need a letter to dental school. I don't have all the specifics yet, but I will get them to you as soon as I can. Would that be all right?" And then see what the professor says. If the professor says yes, then go ahead and start the process and do it as quick as possible. Again, figure out the due dates. Figure out where the application needs to be sent. This is all going to help the professor. Another thing that'll help the professor is if you put together a resume or a CV or something of the sort, because a lot of times, my students are great and a lot of them get really good grades, but I might not fully remember someone from 2 semesters ago. I may not have spent all that much time with that person other than knowing that this person is a good student. So you may want to include a CV stating that, what other activities you've done on campus, what associations you've been a part of, if you've done any internships anywhere, what was, and refresh the professor's mind. Did you get an A in the class? What was your grade in my class? What class was it? What semester was it? What was your section number? All of these things help the professor immensely. You can't even imagine, because I can quickly look up your scores. I say, oh, this was Justin from this semester. I could look up his score real quick. I know exactly where to look. What class it was, what section number, what semester. Oh, there he is. Yes, he scored quite nicely in the class, and I can write a nice letter. Let's look at the rest of the CV. Oh, he's been, interning here and there. He's been doing some research at this local college. I can include all of this in the letter. Oh, and I remember now, he was a very nice student, very polite, and turned in all his work on time. See, now I can write a really good letter for this particular student because I have all of these things. I have his CV. I have all the information I need to look up his grade real quick to confirm. I have firm deadlines, so I know when I need to submit the letters by. I know where I need to send the letters. And all of those things really, really help. And the more you can make it easy for the professor to write you a letter, the better the letter the professor will be able to write for you. For example, tell the professor what kind of program you're applying to. Tell them why you're passionate about that program. The professor wants to be able to write flattering things for you, especially if the professor knows you're a good student. But if you don't share your hopes and dreams with the professor of dental school, if you don't refresh the professor's mind as to who you are, if you don't give the professor a CV or something, if you don't tell the professor when it's due, none of these things are going to help you get a strong letter to get into a strong school, because those strong programs are looking for strong letters, and they can tell when a professor just kind of knows a student versus when the professor really knows a student. And that brings me to my other point. Don't just ask any professor for a letter. Ask the professor you actually know. Ask a professor you have spoken to, and to some extent ones that you've shared your hopes and dreams with, so they can write you a really nice letter. Okay, so again, if you provide those things to a professor, I'm sure they'll be more than willing to write you a letter. And the better they know you, the better experience you've had with that professor, and the better you prepare, the better letter you're gonna get, I'm sure. I hope this helps. Thanks again for watching. Leave a like, a comment below, and I'll get to you next time. Thanks.